All right, so let's move on to number 2.
My number 2.
Number 2 of top cartoon as a kid. Go ahead.
Love this show. It spawned other shows as well, but it's the Animaniacs. Yeah.
We have paid for paid contracts.
So good. This show actually recently popped up on Netflix as well, and Sarah and I watched the first few episodes. That show, 1, holds up. 2, has a lot of jokes that's very meta.
Yeah.
Makes
you wouldn't
a lot
get
of,
as a kid.
Yeah, you definitely didn't get as a kid. It's another one of I think it was just more silly, but a lot of the jokes were for the adults watching with their kids.
They really were.
Yeah.
Really, really were. There's some Bill Clinton jokes that are kind of like sexual innuendo jokes where it's as a kid, there's no way that went over your head.
Exactly. And that they on the second episode, they brought out Spielberg doing an E.T. joke, or maybe you would have gotten it, but I don't think you would know who Spielberg is as a kid.
Maybe,
but not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of those good adult jokes. It's still really funny, really funny.
Yeah.
Pinky and the Brain are my favorites. That's still good.
They got their own show too.
I remember liking the show. I think it was too long.
Yeah,
Pinky and the Brain are good as the little segments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, it was funny. He did a game show to try to win enough money to get some part to take over the world, obviously. But he was in he was in a robot, but a tiny mouse head still. So it's why is your head so small? I was don't worry about that. It's so stupid.
That's just so great. Again,
and the guy kept calling him Brian. It's Brain. But yeah.
I also loved off of that show. That's another spin-off of that show was Freakazoid. Did you ever watch Freak of Me, Freak of You? Runs around in his underwear. But yeah, they even made up a whole internet meme called Candlejack, if we say his name. And it was such an excellent show because they had all of this. They made fun of Looney Tunes. You know what I mean? They were called the Warner Brothers and their sister Dot. Those are such classic jokes. They're funny no matter what time period you are, but the show's production value was also off the charts. They did the songs where they would name all of the capitals and it's that's not easy to do unless someone pre-wrote it. But they brought on Rosie O'Donnell. They made fun of everybody on that show. Everybody was in pop culture. So it's a great show because I'm sure my parents probably maybe enjoyed it while I was watching it as a kid. But I just remember all singing and the paid contracts. I probably didn't get that joke as a kid, but now I watch it. I'm that's hilarious. There's so many good shows.
The wheel of morality at the end of every episode.
Yeah, the wheel of fantastic.
Wheel of moralities, turn. Tell us the lesson that we shall learn.
That's my point. They're making fun of all the other cartoons that are you have to teach kids something. It's okay, we have this obligatory thing where we have to teach you a lesson, and then we'll get back to
let a wheel handle it.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope they do something. Again, all these cartoons put them back out. Make another new Animaniacs.
And now they're on Netflix. Definitely check it out. It still holds up. Watch it with your kids.
How many seasons?
I think it's 3. I want to say it was 3.
See, that seems so short. But they spun off, again, a bunch of their shows.
Yeah, and you got to think
too.
Each season on normal television is 20-something episodes.
Yeah.
So, anyway, what is your number 2, David?
My number 2 is Inspector Gadget.
Oh, I forgot about Inspector Gadget. That's a good show.
Okay. Movies aside. Sorry, what's his name? The guy who played
Matthew Broderick.
Yeah, I like him. But
that was a good movie. It wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't a good movie. The cartoon was probably, again, it's one of my favorites. But again, this is another cartoon that I would race home to watch. It's interesting.
Sorry, what channel was it on?
Nickelodeon, I think.
Okay, I remember watching it, but maybe I missed.
I think it was on a number of networks, but I think Nickelodeon picked it up for one of the rerun. They always did that back in the day. I love this show for a couple different reasons. One, again, all the toys. I had all the toys as a kid. But I loved his suit. The suit was I had a jacket. I made my mom go buy me a giant gray trench coat, and I sewed buttons on it, I think. There was no buttons on it, but I sewed these, and he pulls the button and it gets all big, and I remember doing, and the helicopter comes out of the hat, and then the flashlight finger, and it was just it combined, detective Pink Panther, that with Iron Man. It was the coolest thing ever. He had all these awesome gadgets.
And to me, I watched Get Smart as a kid too, and I think he took that from that, his voice and stuff, right? Is right out of Get Smart.
Yeah, missed it by that much. Yeah, he's got that kind of voice. I also liked it's funny going back and watching this show because they have a new Netflix show, a brand new show that came out a couple of years ago. It's really good. I watched it. It feels just like this. There was a couple things that I loved as a kid that stick in my brain. He would always read his assignment. I remember in Mission Impossible, this will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. The person who would give it to him, his boss, he'd always throw it back at him and then he'd explode. It's still funny. And then he had the 2 companions, Penny, who was his daughter, or I think it was his niece, if I remember correctly. And then the dog was Brain, which is interesting with Pinky and the Brain. But so she had a watch, which is like the Apple Watch. They had like FaceTime on it and everything. It's just cool to watch that. And I used to love his car that turned into like to a van, into like a police car, and then I think it turned into a boat too. On some episode,
the plot required.
Yeah, but I remember having the thing as a kid where you could like take the top off and okay. So and then moving on to the last part that I loved about this, Dr. Claw. Remember, you would never see him; you just see the claw on the cat, and he'd be like, "Talk like this." It was a really creepy voice that he had, but he was always trying to, outsmart, and it was like Mr. Magoo. He would end up, Penny and Brain would end up solving it, and he'd be like, "Oh," they'd be like, "Thank you, Inspector." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're welcome." But they never showed his face, and so I remember they came out with a toy when I was a kid. They came out with a Dr. Claw toy, which was like, holy crap! Like you could see his face, and I remember going to the store and they put a sticker over the plastic covering where his face was, so you had to buy the toy in order. I remember that as a kid, like opening it up real slowly, like, what does he look like? And it was just some guy with like a white hair and a weird looking face. Yeah, it's an old guy, and I was like, what?
That is kind of funny though that they did that.
Yeah, it was like the whole thing on. What was it?
It's like an inside joke.
Yeah, exactly. Very meta. So, but yeah, check out the new Netflix show. I don't, like I said, I didn't really enjoy the movies. I don't know why. They weren't, and they made a second one where like it was like an evil inspector. It was bad. Yeah. Very, very bad. But go watch the old show and watch the new Netflix show. It's pretty good. All right, so that's my number 2.
Number 1.
The number 1 cartoon of all time. You want to go first? Number 1 cartoon as a kid of all time. Drum roll.